Hi, greetings, true believers, and welcome to Marvel May 2026. And unfortunately, this month we're only going to get two movies. So, yeah, but don't worry, but don't worry, I'll be looking at Spider-Man: Brand New Day and Avengers: Doomsday next year, and the following year I'll be looking at Avengers: Secret Wars, and then whatever is coming out after that. So there you go. But anyway, so let's kick things off by looking at Thunderbolts. In Kuala Lumpur, Yelena Belova destroys a laboratory on behalf of CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who is attempting to destroy any evidence of her involvement in the OXC Group's Century Superhuman Project. As de Fontaine faces imminent impeachment for her work with Ox Group, she dispatches Yelena, John Walker, Ava Starr, and Antonia Dreykov, all operatives who worked for her, to a covert Ox facility with orders to kill each other. Being suicide, Ava kills Antonia while an amnesiac man named Bob is released from a suspended animation pod in the room. After realizing they were sent by De Fontaine to be incinerated, along with any evidence for misconduct, they work together to escape from the trap. Upon coming into physical contact with Bob, Yelena and Walker briefly experience visions of some of their worst memories. De Fontaine learns that the group has survived and that Bob was a presumed dead volunteer on the Century trials. When she arrives at the site, Bob creates a diversion by drawing enemy fire, helping Helena, Walker, and Ava to escape. Bob sustains no injuries upon being shot, uncontrollably ascends into the air, crashes on his back at the compound, and is captured and transported to the former Avengers Tower in Manhattan, now renamed the Watchtower. De Fontaine intends to introduce Bob to the press as a superpowered protector akin to the Avengers, hoping the PR stunt will avert her impeachment. Meanwhile, Yelena's father figure, Alexei Shostakov, who overheard details of De Fontaine's plot while working as a freelance chauffeur, rescues Yelena, Walker, and Ava. Walker refers to the group as the Thunderbolts, inspired by Yelena's childhood soccer team. Congressman Bucky Barnes is tipped off about what has happened by De Fontaine's assistant Mel. He captures the Thunderbolts and intends to have them testify in the impeachment proceedings. When Mel expresses concerns about Bob, Barnes takes the group to New York City to infiltrate the Watchtower. The Thunderbolts discover that De Fontaine has convinced Bob to join her and become the superhero Century. Bob easily overpowers the Thunderbolts, but ignores De Fontaine's orders to kill them and allows them to retreat, believing that they are not a threat to him. Developing a godlike delusion of superiority, Bob turns on De Fontaine and is incapacitated by Mel using a failsafe kill switch. This triggers the emergence of the Void, Bob's destructive alter ego and the embodiment of his depression and insecurities, which have been amplified by the Century procedure. The Void begins to engulf New York City in supernatural darkness, trapping its citizens in visions of their own traumatic memories. Realizing that the only way to stop the Void is from within, Yelena enters the darkness to reach Bob's consciousness. She faces her haunted past as a Black Widow and finds Bob hiding in a recreation of his childhood bedroom where he hid from his abusive father. The other Thunderbolts join them, and together they face off with Bob's various traumas and drug addiction until they reach his memory of the Century procedure at the Kuala Lumpur laboratory. They find the Void and are swiftly overpowered. Bob's attempts to fight back threaten to consume him completely until the Thunderbolts hug Bob and affirm their belief in him, allowing him to regain control and overcome the Void. Light returns to the city and the victims are freed. With the threat of the Void neutralized, the Thunderbolts prepare to apprehend De Fontaine, but she manipulates public perception by staging a press conference and introduces the team as the new Avengers and takes credit for their actions. The group goes along with the announcement, but only quietly tells De Fontaine, "We own you now." In a post-credits scene 14 months later, the new Avengers and Bob discuss a growing feud with Sam Wilson, who has his own Avengers team and is suing the new Avengers for trademark infringement. There's also an ongoing problem in outer space, and the group interrupted when the Watchtower detects the arrival of an extra-dimensional spacecraft that has the large 4 emblem on the side. I wonder what that could mean. So anyway, let's take a look at the production of this film, beginning with the development. During the production of the Marvel Cinematic Universe film Guardians of the Galaxy, director James Gunn expressed interest in making a film based on the Marvel Comics team Thunderbolts, a group of anti-heroes and supercriminals. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige said this was a possibility based on the success of Guardians of the Galaxy. By May 2021, Gunn was not interested in the idea after directing the DC Extended Universe film The Suicide Squad, because that team from DC Comics is based on a similar concept to the Thunderbolts. In June 2018, Hannah John-Kamen expressed enthusiasm for reprising her role as Ava Star/Ghost from the film Ant-Man and the Wasp in a potential Thunderbolts film, considering the comics version of Ghost is a member of the team. Speculation that the Thunderbolts team will be introduced to the MCU began in mid-2019, following the announcement that Daniel Brühl would appear as Helmut Zemo in the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, reprising his role in the MCU film Captain America Civil War. That series introduced Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, and shows recruiting Ryan Russell's John Walker/U.S. agent. De Fontaine is also shown to be working with Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova in the post-credits scene of the MCU film Black Widow. Commentators speculate that she was recruiting a team of villains or anti-heroes like the Thunderbolts, and some of the team could appear in The Falcon and Winter Soldier. Executive producer Nate Moore said the Thunderbolts were never considered for the project because they would cloud the story and take away from other aspects of the series. Head writer Malcolm Spillman said there was a lot of chatter around the team's potential introduction to the MCU and added, quote, "I don't know if fans are crazy or not," end quote. Following his work on Black Widow, writer Eric Pearson brought the idea of a Thunderbolts film to Marvel Studios, realizing that Pugh had the potential to headline the film, given that Yelena was a natural leader. He was trying to insert potential of her leading the Thunderbolts to go up against De Fontaine. Because he planned to send the story on Yelena, Pearson decided to include her father, Alexei Shostakov/Red Guardian, on the team, while also including Ghost because he wanted to write the character. Bucky Barnes was also added to the team after a few drafts. The roster for the team eventually became Yelena, Shostakov, Ghost, Barnes, Walker, and Antonio Dreykov/Taskmaster, with the character Bob Reynolds/Sentry added shortly after. This roster stayed consistent through subsequent drafts. To choose the team members, the creatives had looked through the roster of MCU characters to find not just bad guys who could be good, but characters that exist more on that morally gray plane, or who are potentially destined for something else, but then something went awry. Excuse me. Pearson likened Yelena to Michael Corleone and Barnes to Tom Hagen, characters from Mario Puzo's novel The Godfather. In some of the initial drafts, Pearson included Bill Foster/Goliath to continue his relationship with Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp for joining the team by the end of the film. He was ultimately removed from the film, however, probably because Foster didn't have the same background trauma that these other characters had, which was the unifying theme. By June 2022, Jake Schreier was attached to direct Thunderbolts, from a screenplay by Pearson, with Feige producing. Schreier was hired after a presentation that blew away Marvel Studios executives. At the time, the studio had been in contact with actors to discuss their availability to reprise their roles for the film. Schreier had considered including Man-Thing as a member of the team while pitching for the film, who Pearson called an unpredictable creature, explaining that they could not find a way to have his inclusion make sense for the story, in part because the character was drawing visual and narrative attention away from Bob. Another core concept that stayed consistent from the early drafts was the members being sent to kill each other, which Schreier believed provided a neat twist for audiences expecting Marvel Studios' version of the Suicide Squad. Pearson also believed it was important for Thunderbolts not to rehash the story beats of that team, an authority figure forcing criminals to work together, since audiences would have been familiar with that from both Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad. Thus, it did not make sense for the film to include Zemo or Thaddeus Ross, the leaders who had formed the team in the comics, despite Schreier wanting to try to incorporate Zemo. Pearson said the two characters' inclusion was discussed to consider whether it made sense narratively, as a part of the comics, but they would not have featured if it was only for fan service. Zemo was included in an early post-credits scene Ray would have been seen in person pulling the strings, similar character Soze, antagonist in the film The Usual Suspects, but this is quickly moved on from. The film was officially announced in July at San Diego Comic-Con, released at July 26, 2024. It was said to be the last film in Phase 5 of the MCU. And now moving on to pre-production. In September 2022, Joseph Corll of Deadline Hollywood described the film as a spin-off for Yelena because she was expected to lead the anti-hero team, with Pugh and Russell believed to be reprising their roles on the inclusion of role. At the D23 Expo later in the month, Pugh, Russell, John-Kamen, and Louis-Dreyfus were confirmed to star alongside Sebastian Stan as Barnes, David Harbour as Red Guardian, and Olga Kurylenko as Taskmaster, all reprising the roles from previous MCU projects. Pugh was said to be paid 8 figures for Thunderbolts in another MCU film. Prior to the cast announcement for the team, commentators had also suggested it could have included characters such as Abomination or Clint Barton / Hawkeye. Schreier compared the character dynamics to those in the film Reservoir Dogs, Ronin, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which are all about a mismatched team forced to work together. He also pinpointed to a list likely inspiration in the film Toy Story 3, saying the Thunderbolts members are all facing obsolescence like the Toy Story characters are in that film. Harper said the film will be unique in the MCU, describing the main cast as, quote, a bunch of misfits and outcasts and losers, and people who don't really live up to the super and superhero, end quote. Pugh said that joining these characters that they don't play well together, but also expressed confidence that the film will be interesting, fun, and not a straightforward Marvel film. Journalist Jeff Sneeder reported that Pearson's script focused too much on the characters returning from Black Widow, which he also wrote, and Marvel Studios is looking for the other characters to have more equitable roles that would feel like an ensemble film. Schreier did not believe the film was a Black Widow sequel, but rather a sampling of people from different parts of the MCU, acknowledging the writers pulled from other histories, including Yelena Shostakov's relationship that was established in Black Widow. One of Pearson's drafts started the film with the scene of Yelena confronting DeFontaine about her saying to kill Barton, furthering a storyline that was established in the post-credits scene of Black Widow and continued in the Disney Plus series Hawkeye. Pearson said their confrontation helped emphasize DeFontaine's manipulation, but also was not relevant to the larger story being told. Berry joined the cast in January 2023 as DeFontaine's assistant Mel, while Louis-Dreyfus said filming would begin that June. In February, Stephen Yeun was cast as Sentry with the potential to continue in future MCU films. Yeun worked with Schreier on the Netflix series Beef, and the director had the actor in mind when adding the character. Next month, Beef creator Lee Sungjin revealed that he was rewriting the script at Schreier's request and said there was a lot of themes and exciting things that drew him to the project. He worked closely with Schreier on the script and noted that, unlike Beef, Thunderbolts was Schreier's project and had different writing needs than the series, given the film's large scope and scale. With the team largely consistent, Schreier worked in subsequent drafts to go deeper with the characters on the margins, such as Mel and Congressman Gary, and tying their arcs together into something that would feel resonant. At the start of May 2023, filming was delayed due to the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike and was planned to resume after the strike concluded. In June, the release date was pushed back to December 20th, 2024, and the Utah Film Commission announced that Thunderbolts would film in Emery County and Graham County, Utah, spending over $4.5 million in the state. Chapek said the grounded globetrotting film would use several practical filming locations, and the Utah locations were chosen because they felt untouched by the larger world. Sonia Mokovich-Hayes was the costume designer after working on the MCU films Captain Marvel and Spider-Man No Way Home. When the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike ended in November, the release date was pushed back again, this time to July 25th, 2025. Upon returning from the strike, Schreier and the creators were able to re-examine the script. They determined that there was no sense of tension or predictability, and the film felt bloodless, when there should be the tension of not knowing who would survive, given who these characters are. To solve this, they decided to rework Taskmaster's involvement in the film, killing the character early and dry in the film to have her death resonate and inform the fates of the other characters throughout the rest of the film. Having the death occur later in the film was also discussed, which tries that the sadness from it would hang over the rest of the film and distract from the intended storyline of forming a strong bond between Yelena and Bob. In Pierce's original draft, Taskmaster survived till the end and had a subplot where she bonded with Ghost, as well as a recurring joke where she kept forgetting she had made friends with the other characters and was still trying to assassinate Walker because of her memory loss. Pearson understood why the decision was made to kill Taskmaster, also believing the memory loss assassination joke drifted too close to Bob's arc as he was also dealing with memory loss. Additionally, his post-credit scene featuring King the Conqueror was abandoned because Marvel Studios had decided to move away from that storyline. Following the strike caused production delays. Filming was slated to begin around March or April 2024. Yoon exited in January 2024 due to a scheduling issue caused by the delayed production, but was interested in working in a future MCU film. It was unclear whether when Marvel recast rethink Yoon's role. Excuse me. But at the end of the month, Louis Pullman was revealed to be this year's top choice to replace Yoon as Sentry, and its casting was soon confirmed. Geraldine Wiswanthan was cast to replace Eddie Smell after she exited due to the delays. In February, the release date was moved forward to May 2nd, 2025, swapping places with the MCU film The Fantastic Four First Steps. By the end of the month, John-Kamen had joined to serve as the writer during production and was rewriting the script. For the film's final writing credits, Pearson was credited for the story and received a screenplay credit alongside Kahlo, while additional off-screen literary material was attributed to Lee. The script explores mental health, specifically loneliness and depression, particularly Bob/Sentry. Pearson always envisioned ending the film with the emotional moment of giving someone a hug rather than fighting them. First Sentry was added to the film. Walker was intended to be the main antagonist, with Fontaine manipulating him into believing his super soldier serum was wearing off and giving him pills as a solution, making him into a time bomb that made him more unlikable and the monster. Pearson said this version didn't ever totally work, and Walker's actions felt too similar to the plotline of Thaddeus Ross becoming the Red Hulk in the MCU film Captain America: Brave New World. Pearson had not considered Red Hulk for the film's Pearson had considered Red Hulk for the film's villain early in the process, which Marvel Studios declined because of their intended plans for Brave New World. Looking for a new antagonist that would not easily be beatable in a fight, Pearson remembered reading the Sentry miniseries years prior and felt Sentry and his alter ego, the Void, would work for more heroic ambition and self-esteem versus depression and self-loathing and loneliness and isolation. He called Sentry the entire journey for our heroes rolled into one entity, and his seclusion helped make the story cohesive. Pearson was glad he was able to incorporate many elements of the character's comics backstory to fit into the MCU. Said backstory, consisting of Sentry erasing Silverwood's memory to stop the Void, was avoided because it was similar to the plot of No Way Home, in which Peter Parker/Spider-Man had also erased himself from memory. Paul Jenkins, co-creator of Sentry, discussed the character with the creatives, tried calling Sentry and the work Jenkins did with the character a parable for mental health. Schreier explained that Lee felt mental health the discussion was not niche anymore and allowed them to tell the story about that internally and still have a lot of comedy and action for something that feels big and universal. The Thunderbolts team believed the film was a good opportunity to further explore ideas they start to explore beef on a larger scale. Executive producer Brian Chapek came up with the idea that, to defeat Sentry, the Thunderbolts would enter the Void, which manifested memories of their greatest shame, dubbed shame rooms. Lee worked closely with production designer Grace Yoon, who also served that role on Beef, to create the initial specifics of each room. Pearson had originally envisioned them as ethereal and dreamy, but believed making them mazes akin to those seen in the film Being John Malkovich helped with visualizing the concept and made them feel more unsettling. Kahlo further enhanced the shame rooms, suggesting that when Yelena enters the Void to help Bob, that she returned to her initial room seen earlier in the film. Schreier explained that this made a callback of the idea that the greatest shame of all was thinking you could be something bigger than yourself. The Bob's aspirations towards heroism are actually what brings everything down, and need to learn to be okay with who you are without that. Shame marks for Yelena, Walker, and Fontaine are visible, with rooms for the other characters conceived for the film's finale, allowing the team to escape through them. However, Cal felt strongly that the journey to the heart of the void, there needed to be a big bad moment beforehand, and the team should drink their Bob's shame rooms. The other shame rooms included Shostakov being thrown in the gulag, Ghost growing up in an orphanage with no one wanting to be around her, and multiple different ones for Bucky that were a little less than expected idea, including a shameful moment in the Boy Scouts. Schreier suggested during his pitch meeting that one of the film's posters or trailers should use an asterisk and the title asked for the title to imply they needed to come up with something better. Feige, Marvel Studios co-president Louis D'Esposito, and the marketing team loved this idea and decided to fully embrace it for the title and marketing campaign, with the former retitled to Thunderbolts asterisk by March 2024. So the creatives to realize that having the asterisk could lead to the reveal of a new title for the film once it was released, which was subsequently done, changed the title to The New Avengers after then reveals the Thunderbolts to be the New Avengers. Schreier said the ending was always going to have the Thunderbolts revealed as the New Avengers team, and the rest of the film came about building the right story that lived up to that. Pearson explained that Feige Fontaine should introduce the Thunderbolts to the public as the Avengers. Additional discussions were had on what that meant, such as if the N and new should be upper or lowercase, and what the implications of each decision would mean. Thunderbolts included little hints throughout, so the ending did not come as a total surprise, such as the Battle of New York Gala, Avengers Tower becoming the Watchtower, and while explaining how she was in high school when the Avengers first formed. Additionally, the post-credit sequence acknowledged that the New Avengers is not necessarily the most comfortable perfect fit for these characters. The original Thunderbolts team was derived from Yelena's youth soccer team. And now on to filming. Filming was originally scheduled to begin in mid-June 2023 and last for 6 months. It was initially not expected to be impacted by the writer's strike, with the Marvel Studios reportedly planning to shoot what they could during principal photography and make necessary adjustments during already scheduled reshoots. Filming was ultimately delayed by the writer's strike and subsequent SAG-AFTRA strike. The original film schedule overlapped with Stan's work on the film The Apprentice, for which he gained weight to portray Donald Trump. He had begun the physical transformation needed to portray Barnes when the strikes began, and he had to reverse course. Harbour was planned to shoot the film concurrently with the scenes as Jim Hopper for the 5th season of Stranger Things, also in Atlanta. The production was also delayed by the strikes. Principal photography began by February 26, 2024, at Metro Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, under the working title "Oops, All Berries," which is a reference to a variation of the cereal Captain Crunch that only has berry-flavored pieces. Andrew Palmero was the cinematographer, having previously worked on the Marvel Studios series Moon Knight. He replaced Stephen Yedlin, who was originally intended to work on the film. The film was shot for IMAX. Filming occurred in Emery County and Grant County, Utah from May 29 to June 12, 2024. Louis-Dreyfus completed her scenes by early June and said Marvel Studios was trying to get back to their roots with a focus on the characters' humanity, practical stunt sequences, and avoiding visual effects where possible. Filming also took place at the Madame Tussauds Square and Merdeka 118 skyscraper in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. P was insistent on filming the scene where Lena jumps off the Merdeka 118 without the use of stunt doubles. Marvel Studios was initially reluctant to help Pugh to perform the stunt for insurance reasons, but after continually pushing the matter, including to Feige, she was allowed to perform the jump. For Elena's trip through the shame rooms to save Bob, Palmer used a handheld, handmade aesthetic similar to indie films such as Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and those produced by A24 such as Everything Everywhere All at Once. Feige championed doing as many effects practically in the camera as possible, And Troy noted the creators liked the idea of doing a practical rendition of what getting stuck in a loop or a shame room would be. Filming concluded the week of June 19th. And now finally onto post-production. In September 2024, Christopher Wendell Pierce, who were revealed to be cast in the film, with Bauer playing Holt and Pierce playing Congressman Gary. The film's teaser trailer revealed that month that Scarlett Johansson, who played Natasha Romanoff / Black Widow in the MCU from 2010 to 2021, was credited as executive producer. However, Johansson asked for her credit to be removed from the film because she had no involvement with it. In early December, additional photography took place in Atlanta, including to shoot the meth chicken shame room sequence for Bob's Memories. Harry and Angela Canizano edited the film. Yoon previously worked on the MCU films Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and with Schreier on Beef. Jake Morrison is the visual effects supervisor. The visual effects provided by Industrial Light and Magic, Frame Store, Digital Domain, Rising Sun Pictures, Rhino VFX, Base VFX, Crafty Apes, and Mammal Studios. Thunderbolts included a post-credits scene set 14 months after the end of the film where the new Avengers, discussing a problem in outer space, are notified of an extra-dimensional spacecraft entering Earth 616, which is revealed to be the Fantastic Fours. Schreier said the scene was filmed approximately a month before the film's release date on the Avengers Doomsday set by that film's directors, the Russo brothers, and was intended for that film. Schreier was on set when the post-credits scene was filmed. Schreier helped conceive the scene while noting the characters were being given over to a whole new world and new scope to function in, and enjoyed seeing them directed in another context on a different level of scope that had been done for this film. Presumably Kahlo had written the post-credits scene. The original included a sequence that was covered Barnes and Walker had a who's on first file exchanged about the ship having the number 4 on it. Stan called the bit genius when it was sad when it was cut. But Russell saying the exchange became a Leslie Nielsen sketch. Wow. So overall, I really do enjoy this film, and I do like the aspects of mental health and isolation and depression that gets depicted in the movie. So, yeah. Of course, I'm just going to see how the Thunderbolts interact with the Fantastic Four when we eventually get to Avengers Doomsday. So, yeah. So, overall, I give Thunderbolts 5 arc reactors out of 5. Well, tune tomorrow as we take a look at the Fantastic Four first steps. So, until then, in the words of Stan... So until then, in the words of the late great Stan Lee, Excelsior!